Inside Huntsville with Brenda Martin, a conversation with department heads at City Hall on streets, ball fields, public safety, and more. And also with our community partners that add economic security, support education, and enhance the city's quality of life.
Hello, I'm Brenda Martin with Inside Huntsville. So glad you could join me today. The City of Huntsville operates under a mayor-council form of government, as defined by the Mayor-Council Act of the state of Alabama. The City Council is the legislative branch of Huntsville city government, and all official actions must be approved by a majority vote of the City Council. And this would be during its regular meetings on the second and fourth Thursday of each and every month. There are 5 city council districts in the city of Huntsville, and District 1 has a new leader. I have the distinct pleasure of talking to Councilman Devyn, and welcome aboard.
Thank you so much. It is a blessing to be up here on the mountain and to be in your presence. It is true. I've been looking forward to this interview since the day they told me I was city councilman.
Oh, well, you are so kind. Thank you so much. Well, we've got a lot to talk about, and let's first start talking about who is Devyn Keith.
Oh, I tell people he's a mess. But
you were born and raised here.
Born and raised in North Woods. Yes, ma'am. A product of this beautiful community. I tell people, if you were to look at the trajectory of my life, it has a number of fingerprints and a number of individuals who should be paid some overtime. I'm a product of District 1. There's more people probably in District 1 that changed my diaper than my mother did. But I am truly a product of Huntsville and her community, and the beauty there is of people saying, I'll pick up the slack and help where I can. Great.
Now, where did the strong passion, because you've got a strong passion of public service, where did that come from and why?
Yes, ma'am. Directly, I would say the correlation was the fact that I'm a product of somebody else's strong passion. So you tend to remember those things when you get into situations where you have an opportunity to even run for office, or just even going into college and going into social work and getting my master's in public policy, public administration. But I will also say it's important to note, it's a little bit weird. I'm a bit of a historian. People think I'm smart, but I'm just a good listener. 2 ears, 1 mouth, as my grandmother would say. Hubert Humphrey gives a resounding speech at the DNC convention in 1948. At that time, he's a white guy from Minneapolis, but he's telling the nation at that point the importance of understanding what is called the Minority Report. And usher in, before the Civil Rights Movement starts in the 1950s, a white man from Minneapolis, a mayor, and goes on to be LBJ's vice president, stands in front of the nation and says, we need to think about how we're doing civil rights, and we need to do civil rights better. If a man like him in 1948, understanding the ramifications of that and what came of that, that led to the Dixiecrats and growth of George Wallace, can do something like that, I thought to myself, how could I not be involved? Okay. And I learned that at a young age, the involvement can start, and you have a huge, sort of reach when you get into this idea of politics that affects everybody's day of life.
So it started like years ago.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. This just didn't happen. Yeah, the idea of being an elected official definitely happened recently, but the whole overall understanding of public policy and the importance of knowing.
Of involvement.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Action-based outcomes. People know that it was a king that was nonviolent, but he was also the most involved person in the policy perspective.
That's for sure.
Yes,
That's for sure. Well, when you were in college at Sanford University, you started a nonprofit organization. Ma'am. Tell us about that.
Brothers of One Voice was a true opportunity for me to sort of get involved. I used to go to this detention center and volunteer. I met a young man in the short of the story who asked me, he said, other than playing cards, what could you really do for me, Devyn? And it just rocked my world. And I sat there and thought about it for weeks. So me and a group of guys, I pitched the idea to them that we should put together our own Pell Grant money. I was getting Pell Grant at the time, and we put our own money together. And by the time that Jamil got out, who's in one of my videos on YouTube, he had a transition plan, something he'd never heard of before. He had a place to live, he had clothes, he had opportunity to have food. And for the next 6 months, we were involved in his life until he got on his feet. Now Jamil has a job, has a daughter, and lives in Birmingham.
And doing well.
Yes, ma'am.
Amazing.
That was a blessing. It was a blessing of an opportunity, and it truly opened my eyes to understanding what we as a state can do better when it comes to direct funding and involvement for the individuals getting a second chance and released into the state.
Well, once you completed your advanced degree, you began working as an assistant coordinator.
Yes, ma'am.
Of community services, again, being involved in the community. This was, however, in Massachusetts.
Yes, ma'am. Ooh.
Tell me about that.
It was cold.
Well, Boston is cold,
It is
that's for
unreal.
sure.
I don't wish it on my worst enemy.
To live there.
Yes, ma'am. But it was a beautiful city. I was blessed overall politically to just fall into Boston politics. I was mentored by Senator Mo Cowan. I had legislative friends. Boston is not only the city's capital, but also the state's capital is located in Boston. So you have politics all around. Met Mayor Menino, Marty Walsh, who's the current mayor. But that opportunity that I had working for the state was to understand logistics and how we get things done at the state as a line item. How do we get road work done, construction work done, and how much does that cost? How do we reduce the cost on our taxpayers? Because I think it's important to understand, in a private market as a business, people think, how do I increase the cost on the customer and decrease the cost on the developer or the manufacturer? Well, in public market, in the government, we don't think that way. We think, how do we decrease the cost? Taxes and fees, but increase your quality of life, public services. That's a tough place to be, and it takes, in my opinion, the smartest minds to come together on one accord to get that done.
And so you learned an awful lot.
Understatement. Yes, ma'am. Boston is the brain of this nation. It is the birthplace, in my opinion, of something. I spent a lot of time at Harvard.
Did you?
As a McCormick Scholar, I was also the graduate assistant for my program, and it was a blessing to become a McCormick Scholar because they paid that bill for graduate school, and it is rare that you get scholarships in grad school. So I was truly blessed, but busy in writing policy, and got a chance to really do some great dissertation work as well. But Boston really, really put me in the mind frame of thinking from a policy perspective about people and how we affect people from a dollar amount and long-term planning as well.
I'm glad you shared that with us so that, people understand you've got a background.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. My original idea was either to become a, good lobbyist. I put quotes in there because people have a notion about lobbyists, but you can lobby for good things. People lobby for breast cancer, so forth, energy efficiency. I planned on being a lobbyist for social justice reform and certain things, and educating myself that I can always be some sense of a site expert or a sector expert on these things. But when the idea and opportunity to actually be a public official opened itself, and though I never wanted to do it, I sort of stepped up, and this is where we are now.
Well, let's talk about your decision to run for office in your hometown. However, you called it a movement.
Yes, ma'am.
And that got people's attention.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to think, I bring it down to one definition: diverse perspectives, but singular action. It was called the Big Six in the Civil Rights Movement. It was 4 women who led the women's movement. It was a conglomerate and concerted effort among different colleges, different age ranges against the anti-war movement. It's always been people who've had different perspectives but decided on one action to get involved with. So my run was this group of about 8 of us at my kitchen table off Maston Lake, and they thought of about 6 or 7 different things they thought North Huntsville needed. And it was diversity in the perspectives, but our singular action was, let's get the office of District 1. Okay. And I said, maybe somebody else should do it. And they just said, no, Devyn, we think you're the best. So I stepped up to do that. But that was the reason it was a movement. You had Republicans. I tell people all the time, the funniest thing was the day that I was off Sparkman Drive and saw my sign next to a Trump sign. And there's no disrespect to the political affiliation, but me and Trump are 2 totally different people in political perspectives. But somebody thought it important enough to say, I agree with Devyn on what should be done for District 1. And though in that ramification, I also agree with Trump what should be done for the nation. So I knew that there was just a diversity of people who had came out, and that's why we call it a movement.
A movement, interesting. Now, as you've indicated numerous times, there's been a lot of progress made in District 1 over the years.
Yes, ma'am.
However, you have a plan.
Yes, ma'am.
And let's talk about that plan. That plan reflects reform, revitalize, replicate. Explain that, if you will.
Yes, ma'am. So what we've seen in the city of Huntsville, I'm just going to use Huntsville as an example. In a sense, we're almost a subsidiary of Redstone. They bring jobs. Those companies also bring subsidiary companies, and then we get the ability to employ people who live here. We've seen growth exponential because of our relationship with Redstone. Well, that's long-range planning. What do you do to sort of build off the opportunity that Redstone and NASA offers? My examples of reform is, one, we need to reform how we think about governance. I am not in a position at the 7th floor in an ivory tower just to hear your concerns and then delve out my decisions. I can bring it down. I tell people I'm moving into Terry Heights next week because that community said that they felt only politicians come around during election season. I said, all right, well, I'll move and live here. So the pothole that bothers you bothers me. the drugs that you say happen, I see them. And the gang banging you see happens, I can be affected by it as well. Also trying to be a great neighbor. Reforming that is that perspective of making your city councilman just as common as you. The revitalized point is that we need to pick specific areas. I use the example, Mid-City is about to be developed right there at the old Madison Square Mall. That Madison Square Mall has lived its lifetime. Now, Huntsville has gotten involved and had developers come in. Now, Huntsville believes in being some sense of an initiator, having an opportunity to invest with the developers so that we have some sense of growth together. We've done that with Whole Foods and see that development grow.
Right.
We do that through TIFs. We've seen that off University as well. Well, there are spots in Northwest Huntsville that need revitalization. Involvement from the city to entice and incentivize private market developers to come in. That is part of the plan. I've identified 4 or 5 places. We get in line and understanding how we want these things to grow and find out what developers feel that they can come in and do and what they need for us in a sense of collateral. That's the revitalized part. The replicate part goes to social issues and public issues. There are things that we can do better that people really don't think about. Community policing is one of those things. Though our crime rate can be low, you should never be content with a low crime rate. You should work to where the crime rate, though it might never reach 0, we're working towards 0. In that, we have to look around the nation and see what they're doing. How are they increasing the connection between concerned citizens and good policing? Because I believe in the notion that great citizens and great cops equals a great community. But those two things have to be worked in a different realm. And as decades change, so do the policies change. So we have to do that around the connection of replicating good, tangible, solvent programs that can be applicable and tailored
Right
to fit
here.
District 1. And that is the master plan of, Lord willing, these 4 years that goes in a progressive manner.
Well, okay, so you've been in office now, let's say, some 3 months. Okay.
Not 3 years.
Is it what you expected?
No, ma'am. And I say this, naively, I walked into it thinking that you can just, okay, this is the problem, this is the problem, this is the problem. But what I understand is the 1st through 6th floors that are under the city councilman at the city hall have a way of doing things, and a culture was created. Now, it's efficient and it's proficient. But in order to change in a progressive manner anybody or any entity or any department, it's going to take time. You got to build relationships. And I'm not an authoritarian person at all. I love working with people. I tell people, even my assistant, she says, well, I work for, I said, no, ma'am, we work together because our common goal is the betterment of Huntsville. So I will say the naiveness of, being 27 with 3 gray hairs, and they're growing, by the way. I'm getting on my 4th and 5th.
That you just got in the last 3 months.
It's the Obama effect. I got to believe it. It's important for me to know patience and relationship building is everything. And also, I'm such a sponge. My individuals that work with me on the 7th floor, my colleagues, other city councilmen, they've been doing this for a while. Some longer than I've actually been alive. So they have a well of wisdom of which I need to draw from before I make any move.
So your relationship there is fabulous.
Yes, ma'am. It's always a notepad and a pen for me.
Okay.
And I'm always asking questions. And I hope that millennials, including myself, as I say it, we need to understand that though we can usher in this next generation of political growth, private growth, educational growth, any type of growth as a second wave of leaders start, we need to learn first. And you can learn those things in a way that maybe hasn't been done by not just watching videos, but sitting at a table with somebody over coffee, which I love.
Good for you.
Or sitting in somebody's office and just asking one question and letting them talk. Or being interviewed by somebody who's seasoned and has nothing but a well of wisdom as well. So I'm all about 2 ears and 1 mouth, as my grandmother says.
two ears and 1 mouth. I'll have to remember. Remember that. Well, so far, have you seen anything or have you observed anything in your district that really excites you?
The involvement level.
Yes.
People want to change. Nothing can grow without change, as John F. Kennedy said. And the excitement that when people want something so bad, when they're on the edge of their seats, they're willing to get involved in maybe a level they never had before. Now it's up to me to give them something to get involved in and get behind. It's up to me to stay on City Hall and say we can do things better in District 1. And I believe that notion is understood, but once you have people grab, once you've given them the bait of an election and they come out, and I was blessed with the percentage of people who came out and voted for me, now you got to give them a reason to stay there. And that's exciting.
So what reason are you giving them? What are you doing right now? What's your first plan, if you will?
The biggest thing for me right now, especially in this first 6 months, is
Yes.
identifying opportunities.
Okay.
The transition for me was a little bit different. And my predecessor, my hat goes off, he's a Titan.
Yes.
Has been in there longer than I've been alive.
Yes.
And truly has been a pillar. But that transition between what he was trying to get done and what I'm trying to get done didn't happen as beautifully as I wanted. So identifying opportunities to where economic engines can be put in place. Can we bring in, one lady told me, I'm gonna vote for you if you can bring me a Chick-fil-A. Well, maybe we could bring in a Chick-fil-A. Have we actually explored the idea of bringing a Chick-fil-A? What will it take to bring in a Chick-fil-A? And we also have to understand that we have things that are already in place. That overpass is coming,
Yes.
whether I want it or not. I wouldn't want it, but whether I want it or not, it's coming.
It's coming.
So what do we do to build off of it
Okay.
so that Huntsville is not bypassed? What do we do to do crime better? How do we as citizens get involved in the educational system? So goes the city school board, so goes the city school, so goes that community.
That's true.
So giving them tangible, hey, this is an opportunity for you to come out and vote, voice your opinion. The city, I think we should buy this part of land and then pitch it to a developer to come and use a multi-purpose facility. That's what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
So that there's tangible steps for the citizens of District 1.
So are you having any kind of outreach, any kind of meetings or anything like
Yes,
that
ma'am.
for your
So
district?
the first town hall that we had was an introduction. I invited the city school board. She did a wonderful job. And an introduction to everybody. Hey, this is the perspectives that I'm taking. Moving on, I want everything to be a little bit more specific to where it's not just, let me tell you about this pothole. I'm all about hearing about potholes. But what I want to lay out at every town hall from here on out is, hey, in these last 3 months, I've taken this step. I've met with this developer and I've identified this piece of land that I believe we should develop. This development will take 2 to 5 years and this amount of money. How do you feel about that?
Yes, yes.
And giving some people some tangible things. Johnson is a great example of that.
Okay.
What do we do with Johnson?
Right.
We do not want to have a building that costs $65,000 in utilities. It's 300,000 square feet with only 25,000 usable square feet in it. Sit there in a community to where it rots and becomes a vacant property and takes down the property value of the adjacent communities. So giving them tangible step-by-steps at every meeting is my importance. Now, I can go out there every day and be heard and listen to you, but at some point you're gonna ask me, well, what are you doing about it?
Okay.
So I would rather take the preliminary proactive steps to give you a reason of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and this is what the outcome could look like in the long run.
Now, how often will you be having your town meetings?
So this first year, I'm looking to have at least 5 of them. I've already had one about the utilities tax, the utilities increase.
Yes.
After that one, I plan to have another one coming soon about Johnson. And then after that, I'm looking in the summer, maybe even mid to late summer, introducing this idea of a master plan. The perspectives of what I think is important for District 1 specifically, no other districts,
Okay.
and how the city should look and move forward. And if the community agrees with this, then we put this on the desk of the mayor, as well as my other councilmen, and say, here's an idea, here's a perspective, and here's a plan. It's tangible, and I do my homework. That's the beauty of it, Melanie. You give us something to do,
And you're gonna.
we're gonna do it. So
You
I do
certainly
my homework
will.
and promise you that we will have something tangible. Now, some things we can't have. We can't put a Macy's at Johnson.
Exactly.
Just let everybody know
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now. I would love
Not-
to.
not gonna happen.
Not gonna put a Macy's at Johnson, but there are things that we can put there, and I want people to understand that.
I know your days are busy.
And
That's an understatement, I'm sure.
yes. And,
How do you manage it? Because, you know, there's just so much to do.
yes, ma'am. And I tell people all the time, it's a part-time job with undertime pay and overtime work. But, you know, Gail and Tamika and
great.
John, they're wonderful, man. John Hampton's been wonderful. All the 8-4 Miss Scrimshire, people have been wonderful. But it's unique for me because I've lived on a lot and I've lived on a little. This pay that we get does not cover what we do.
What you do.
Yes, ma'am. But I feel
Yes.
that at this point in my life with no kids, no wife, no debt, thank the Lord, opportunity I could just like go 100, I could put 80-hour work weeks in it, which I
Easy, huh?
have.
Yes.
And then one day I won't be able to. Let me say, this won't happen. I don't plan on being in city council all my life.
Okay.
But one day I just think right now God has blessed me with the opportunity to have time and energy to do it.
Right.
I truly think people don't understand that you can meet with somebody. There's a constituent that calls me. I did ask Tamika to look, some 30-something requests for meetings in 1 week.
I'm sorry, say that again.
30-something. I think it was 31 or 32 requests in 1 week for meetings,
Wow.
Monday through Friday. And they have legitimate concerns. And you want to hear everybody. And then some people take 30 minutes, some people take 30 hours. So if you just put that into the ramification of what makes a good councilman, accessibility, you can only imagine how many meetings and concerns and calls I get.
And you have to manage all of that.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. But I signed up for it, so.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
I'll
You
kick that
did.
burden. I just promise you, at some point, if they're not calling, there's two signs. Either I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do and they don't believe me, or I've accomplished some goals and they're
That's
happy.
right.
So.
How many people live in your district?
I think we're hitting around the 37,000, 38,000 mark. Yes, ma'am. With the redistrict of the lines, it should be in that range. Yes, ma'am. It might be from 35. It changes. Census data obviously is in years of parallels, so we'll see it in the next one. But I should be getting close to 37, 38.
That's a lot of people to
That's
manage.
a whole lot of people. Yes,
to
ma'am.
manage. I mean that's exactly what you're doing.
Yes, ma'am.
You know.
Absolutely. And everybody has a different care and concern.
Yes.
It is never singular. Somebody thinks their pothole is worse than the pothole that they don't know about is 2 streets over. You know, somebody thinks that everything can be done better, which is fine because it is your tax dollar. Don't forget it.
Yes.
You absolutely should be. It's just like a portfolio of money you invest. How is my money being spent?
Yes.
How am I not getting a better outcome?
Yes.
That's fine. But in the middle is me, the conduit of, I see that you're giving us this tax dollar, but I promise you we're giving the best return on investment that we can at this time.
But you know, one of the things too that's important to remind people is that, you know, of our 21 departments, our department heads, they work consistently to give the best that they can to our public. Would you not say that?
They're the machine.
Yeah,
And
there you
know,
go.
we're just the conductors. We just drive it. I mean, you look at Miss Jordan in community development. You look at Miss Joy in landscape. You look at all these personalities.
Yes.
Chris over public works.
Yes.
John Hamilton. You look at Miss Scrimshire. All these departments have these unique individuals who have some sense of oversight, and they do 21 different things.
Yes.
The common point of goal is make Huntsville better.
Make Huntsville better.
Make it
Yes.
more efficient, and make it a higher quality of life to where we can attract outside individuals to come and call this place home.
That's right.
And if the only thing we can do at the 7th and 8th floor is try and increase the efficiency and allocate it in a way that is equitable to all of Huntsville.
Well, it's been a pleasure to have you
Oh
here.
man, it has been an honor.
I am so glad to finally get you on the show, but we're going to have you back real soon because you've got a lot going.
Yes, ma'am. I would love to come.
We've got to help
We're
you
going to talk
get
about
that
this master plan.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am. It's coming.
I'm interested in
It's a
hearing about
long-range
that.
plan for District 1. We're going to be on it.
Yes, that is wonderful.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Thank you so very much. And I thank you for allowing me to come into your home with another episode of Inside Huntsville. I'm Brenda Martin. Have a great day.